So I've got Renato with me again today.
Hello. I have a camera this time.
He's got a camera, and we're discussing the future of retro game collecting and all the things that entail retro games, pricing, collecting, etc.
The future of things from the past. I like it.
So, as you know, I do follow the market prices very closely. I've been following them like on a daily basis pretty much for like
Yeah.
8 years when I started collecting, seriously started collecting. So I've kind of seen them rise in value, but there's a big talk amongst collectors. And the big question is, are these games going to have value in the future like they do have now? They have today, they have a significant value. Prices are still trending up. It's a little bit slowing down a little bit, but the trend is still up. But let's say, so me, I want to collect it. I want to buy these games. I'm willing to pay $500 for some games. But let's say 25 years from now, 50 years from now even, when I'm retired, and maybe I don't want these games anymore, I want to sell them at some point, who knows. But is the next generation, is little 5-year-old Timmy, going to want to buy my Snow Brothers game in the future that I paid $400 for? Is little Timmy going to want to buy that for $400 or $500? So what do you think?
Well, in a general sense, and this is more an economic thing than a gaming thing, collectibles only increase in value. If something is considered a collectible, if it's considered something worth keeping, then the longer you go, the more it becomes worth. And that's just how it works, and that's kind of how it's always worked. The only catch to that is what is considered a collectible can change over time. There are some things that were once considered collectibles that no longer have any real value. And there are some things that were once considered common that are now collectibles, and that's just how collectibles work, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of liken it to, at least for me, again, maybe off topic slightly, but retro games to current collectors, we view them as art. So it's equivalent to, how rich people collect art. That's one of the things that they do. It's also a way to preserve the value of their money.
Yeah.
Well, to me, a retro game is art. It's art that you can play.
Yeah.
So even a crummy game like Dennis the Menace for Super Nintendo, just random game off the top of my head, it holds value because it sucks, but it still holds value because everything about that game is still art. The graphics is art. The way it was designed is art. It sucks. It's terrible art, perhaps, but it's still art.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I'm one of those games are art hippies where video games should be considered a legitimate art form, like movies, like painting, like anything else.
Developers developing any game is a form of art, and they're so the designers, right? They're artists. They're artists at the end of the day.
Now, speaking as a game designer, game design is also a science. There's a lot of facts and numbers and hard-coded stuff you have to deal with in game design, but it is also an art. It's like cooking. You can build a game using only science, or you can build a game using only art, but what you're going to have is an incomplete product. You're going to have something that's flashy, but that doesn't play well or do anything. Or you can have something that plays extremely well and is extremely well constructed, but doesn't say anything or appeal to anyone. You have to have both for a game to be good. So while games are art, game design is both an art and a science.
Right. So here's another question for you, because this is a very common question. I believe it's the NWC Gold NES Cart, of which they only made 10, I believe. I've forgotten the history on that. I believe some of them were given out as a Nintendo Power draw contest.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them may have been given out, or all of them were given out at a North American Nintendo event.
Okay.
championship event, North American
All right.
Championship event. And there's only 10 that ever existed. No one knows where all 10 are. 10 might not exist anymore. I forget how many are accounted for. Let's just say it's 5. 5 known.
Yeah.
We know where 5 of them are in collector hands.
Okay.
And the last time I think one of those sold on record was, I don't know, $200,000 US, something like that. It was over 150,000. Might have been up to
People
250.
pay ridiculous amounts for stuff to just collect.
Yeah.
Something being rare gives it value to people.
And the funny thing is that anybody who actually owns one is sure as hell not going to play it. It really is just for display. Yeah. That's
it's just a have.
It's just a have, yeah. But the question amongst collectors is this thing going to go to a $2 million valuation in the future, something like akin to a rare baseball card, right? There's $2-3 million baseball cards out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people joke, people who don't believe in the value of the video games kind of say, well, that's impossible. Video games are never going to hold the value that rare baseball games or rare hockey cards have.
Yeah.
And people and it's potentially a very good theory, and maybe they're right, but then people like me think I think that this thing will get to that $2 million mark, because I sit there and I think to myself, well, if I was a filthy rich millionaire, I'm not interested in baseball cards. I'm not interested in hockey cards or collecting Mona Lisa artwork. I'm interested in buying that NWC Gold cart for $2 million.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. What do you think? Am I crazy?
Well, to those people who say that the video games are never going to have the value of baseball trading cards, to them I say, when baseball trading cards came out, people said that they were just a fad, and they'd never had.
Oh, I think
You know what was a fad? Was Pogs. Pogs was a fad.
Ooh, Pogs, yeah.
But you know what? Rare Pogs from back in the day could still sell for a ridiculous amount of money.
No way. People are still collecting those?
That actually was a fad.
That was a
Whereas
crazy fad.
video games are not a fad.
Oh,
video games are an art form that's here to stay.
That's so fascinating that people are still out there collecting Pogs. And you know what? The Pog collectors out there are probably buying video games for the same reason we do. Partly the nostalgia. They were probably hardcore into Pog when they were, 10 years old or whatever. And they just...
And the value a thing has is, what is somebody willing to spend on it? If there are going to be people willing to spend $2 million on an old video game, then it's going to be that valuable. It's as simple as that. That's how economics works.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the other thing that my argument for the value going up is that I think the games are going to continue to get more and more rare, because I do think a lot of these rare games over time are going to continue to disappear. I think they're going to accidentally get thrown out. I'm sure a lot of them have, but I think that
they'll get thrown out, they'll get lost, they'll get damaged.
Yeah, lost, damaged, or thrown out, which is significant when there's so few available on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And certain games aren't super rare. It's just that nobody's willing to sell them, and so they get value that way too. Like Earthbound is not super rare, but it holds a lot of value because the people that have it generally aren't selling it.
Oh yeah, look at Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger's not rare. There's tons of copies of Chrono Trigger out there, but it's an amazing game and people love it, and the people who have it are not going to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sells for, if you look up how much Chrono Trigger costs on like eBay or Amazon, it's a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, that's the reason I don't own it. I've always wanted that one. I'll get it one day, but it's too pricey. I just can't justify it. So here's another question then, because this comes up a lot too. So we know that the retro games, or we think that the retro games are going to hold value, like an old NES game, old Super Nintendo game, GameCube game, PS1 game, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But as the new generation of games came out, I'm guessing around the PS3 time, we started getting games that that required an update after you purchased the game to be able to play it via an online server, connecting to an online PlayStation server, and the game updates. So what's going to happen with these games? Is there still going to be value in collecting these old PlayStation 3 games, or are they or PlayStation 4? Let's even go to PlayStation 4. Are those games going to hold any value in the future? And I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Well, it's hard to say. When games made the move from cartridges to CDs and then DVDs and Blu-rays, there became an issue with actually collecting them because discs are far more fragile than cartridges. Like, you've got all those old Nintendo cartridges behind you. Any of those will still play, and they're 30 plus years old, right? 40 now?
Yeah.
Shit.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah. But you take any Blu-ray from a PS3 game, and there's a 50-50 shot that it won't even work anymore, just because it's so much more delicate.
Yeah, I've heard that the lifespan on CDs is significantly lower. I'm going on vague memory, but I've heard as low as 25 years. Some CDs can start
I've even had
computer
CDs that were only 10 or 15 years old that just stopped working because
holy,
the plastic stopped holding the information. Cartridges are far more durable and long-lasting, so collecting cartridges will probably always have some value, but collecting games that are hard copied on CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, it's a lot more of a risk, and I don't see it being as big of a thing. But if there is a disc that has been protected and taken care of and somehow maintained its functionality, which you'd have to be able to test, which if it requires an update to play, you can't. And that's the thing. People who pay a ridiculous amount for collecting things want those things to work, even though they're never going to use them.
That's true. Look how many games I got behind me. You think I play all those games?
No, of course not.
Not a chance.
Half of them are probably shit, because honestly,
yeah, and half of them are. Well, more than half of them are. 80% of them are crap.
Probably, but you collect things to collect them, but for it to have value to collect, it also still has to work, which is this weird paradox.
It's like why would somebody
who collect?
Why would
you have people who bought those? Sorry, you first.
I was just gonna say, why would somebody buy like a broken Super Nintendo system?
Exactly. You have those guys who bought that golden cartridge that you were talking about for 150,000, 200,000 or something.
Yep.
And you can bet it wouldn't have sold for that much if it didn't work. They're never going to play it. They're never going to play that fucking game.
Imagine that if it was broken.
That's never going in a console. It's just going on a shelf, probably in like a display case.
Yeah, it'll go in a dust-free,
if
enclosed
it
environment.
Doesn't work, it suddenly loses its value for some reason, even though it's never going to be used. So there's this ridiculous paradox with that, but what that means is, for things that have a much more limited shelf life, like CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, then they won't maintain collection value they won't really have a big collection value. People might still want a copy of Shadow of the Colossus for the PS2 to put on their shelf, even after it no longer works, just to say, I have this, but it won't be anywhere near as valuable as half of those crappy games on the shelf behind you.
You know what, maybe that's a good
200
point.
years.
Maybe that's kind of the future in that, let's say you get a PS4 game that you can't actually play because 25 years in the future, all the servers are shut down. You can't actually update the game.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll still hold value, but maybe not as much value. So they might still be, $200 games or whatever.
Yeah.
But they'll
Modern games that still have physical hard copies, I think, will still have collection value, because all sorts of random crap has collection value. That stupid hat you're wearing has collection value.
This might be a $200 hat 10, 15 years from now. I might be selling this on eBay, $1,000.
Dude, if you get famous, that hat will sell for $500,000, no problem.
You ever see
But
a side note, you ever see that H3H3 episode? You ever watch H3H3?
I have no idea what that is.
Anyways, it's a famous YouTuber, and he made a joke about modern art, and he decided to
Okay.
try and sell his hat on eBay. He put it in a display case, you know, kind of making fun of modern art, and said, "Oh, look, it's in a display case. It looks nice, fancy hat." And he threw it up on eBay, and it went up to $10 million. But it was all trolls bidding,
course it
right?
did.
It was just
Yeah.
trolls. Yeah, it was just a joke.
Well, I hate to be the troll who actually got stuck with pain for that.
Yeah, $10 million hat.